Tragically, 22-year-old Georgia Bulldog Laken Riley was murdered by an illegal immigrant who had been previously removed from the country after entering illegally and returned. Joined by Mary Catherine Ham, Georgia Bulldog herself, and a proud Georgia Bulldog. Mary Catherine, I read your first few posts on Twitter about this. You've run the path that Laken Riley was killed on. Tell us about your reaction to the coverage of this story.
Yeah, I mean, this one is a little bit more emotional for me. Hearing about where she was killed, just that place. I ran that trail every single week of my college career. My club lacrosse team where we practice is across the lake from that trail. I know exactly where she was found. That was a safe seeming place, and there's a reason that it felt safe. It's because there hasn't been a homicide at the University of Georgia for about 30 years. Right. So people sent their kids there, and kids went out and did the things that they had fun doing at the University of Georgia without a lot of worries in this way. And now we have a situation where there's two stories. There's a personal story because I want to honor this woman and her life. The thing that strikes me is that every minute I've lived from 22 to now, she had those taken from her. She doesn't get the career and a family and kids. Her family had those things taken from her. Her friends had their whole lives with her taken from them. And so there's that part of the story. And the campus gathered yesterday to honor Laken Riley and another student, tragically, who died by suicide the same week. Wyatt Banks was his name. So it's been a rough week for the University of Georgia. There's also a policy story. And the news's job is to cover that part of the story accurately. And yet they're often not, because they're omitting the fact that Jose Antonio Ibarra, the 26-year-old man accused of killing this young woman, by the way, he was arrested thanks to security footage, so I think we have some certainty that they're onto the right person here, that he was an illegal immigrant. He was here illegally. He was arrested at least once in New York City for child endangerment while he was riding a scooter without a license or registration or any of the things you need or protection for the child. He, of course, was not picked up by ICE in New York City because they don't do that there. They don't allow ICE to communicate with their law enforcement and pick up folks who might otherwise need to be taken out of the country. So he moves down to Georgia, where he hangs out with his brother, who has several arrests to his name and still apparently worked on the University of Georgia campus. So these two guys end up in Athens with no worries, because it's also a sanctuary city, that their crimes might endanger their bogus asylum claims in this country, because the federal government and the local government are totally fine with whatever they want to do until they escalate to such a point that this man's now held in jail for murder.
Wow. Now, I thought Ibarra had been removed from the country before and had returned, Mary Catherine Ham. Maybe I've got that wrong. Maybe I'm confusing it with the arrest. But the point is, under President Biden, the border is wide open. 8 million people have walked in. They've had, quote, encounters with Border Patrol. In the first quarter of the new fiscal year, which began on October 1, that number has gone up to 9 million. And we haven't talked about the 40,000 Chinese nationals who've walked in. But this Georgia murderer, I'm outraged at AP and other stories that treat this as a women's safety issue. Have you commented on that in print as well?
Yes, because it's so ludicrous, by the way, because again, the University of Georgia actually quite a safe place. Now, is this a rational fear when you go out maybe at night for a jog that you want to be a little more careful? Sure, but this is not some University of Georgia problem or a toxic masculinity problem. This is a problem with the guy who is accused of murdering Laken Riley. And the crazy thing about the AP story, and this is how you know they're just lying to you instead of being sloppy or just a little biased, right? Is that they mention Molly Tibbetts in the same story. They have a sample size of 2 young women murdered while they were jogging. Molly Tibbetts was killed in 2018 in Iowa. Similar story. University of Iowa student went out for a jog, didn't come home. Her killer, who is now serving a life sentence, was also an illegal immigrant. And somehow the AP is unable to find that common thread because they don't want you to have that conversation. Yeah. It was
Wow.
unmentioned.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's dispositive, as we lawyers like to say, that
Yes.
bad things happen when you let young men of predator age enter into the country illegally and do not detain them while we process their suitability to be here. Now, Mary
Yes.
Catherine, I don't want to politicize the tragic death of a young woman, but I do believe this will be an issue in the campaign. I think everyone's going to know Laken Riley's name. Do you?
Look, I think this can make a difference. And the reason I think it can make a difference is because I know the demographics of the people who are, for instance, parents of University of Georgia students, right? Georgia is home to many in-state students because they have a great scholarship program where you can go if your grades are decent at a very low price to the University of Georgia. So a lot of those parents are in Georgia and they are voters and they are suburban voters outside of Atlanta. So I think, and I've seen the parent boards. This is the part where I'm like closely connected to it. The parent boards have just lit up on Facebook and other places discussing the safety of their kids because the thing is the DA here, look, not every person who crosses the border obviously is going to commit violent crime, but if you have a place that is a magnet for people who are protected when they commit crimes, you're going to get more of them. And they're asking the DA, what the heck have you been doing to keep my kids safe? So that's a thing that resonates with parents.
Go and listen more. MK Hammer discussed this with Vic Mattis on Getting Hammered, her weekly or bi-weekly podcast, which you got to have on your download, Getting Hammered. Mary Catherine, thank you for a heartfelt appearance today. I appreciate it. Go Dogs. You've never heard a Buckeye say that before, but good luck in getting through this week.